Thank you for that kind introduction, Nelson. And your team is even more incredible. You know, we do a lot of these things, and you're often given an assignment, and you try to deliver that assignment. This was a true partnership. I mean, this was incredible teamwork with Nelson, Mike, Nate. The whole team you're just incredible team at the Northwest Council. Yeah, in that bio, I'm particularly proud to be a senior fellow working with my colleague Ross Duvall at your great Think Do Tank here, Heartland Forward. And this report was informed by a lot of that work. We did 2 earlier reports on positioning the region for the post-pandemic world, where we deep dived into a lot of data. Then we supported Stuart Walton in his effort with the state. And you know what's nice? I not only met a lot of friends here at the council, at the think tank. Every time I come, more of my friends move here, which I find amazing. Jesse Elliott, you know, Jesse Elliott and I have worked together for over 20 years. Allison Esposito, Ross. It's just amazing to me. I can't think of another place. This is no bullshit, sorry. I can't think of another place I go, like where not only do I meet new friends, my old friends show up here and tell me how much they love it. I'll tell you, on the ride over here, I had an African-American driver, incredible guy, telling me how incredible it is here. And, you know, I've been coming here for a while. And I was thinking about this morning, staying at the 21C. My kids, last time I was here for a long time, was for the original summit. That was 2018. My kids have gotten my kids were like 1 and 2 now. I'm bad at math, trust me. They're now 3 and 5. So you know when you see your kids grow, you go, wow, that's amazing. And I have to tell you, what I saw happen here it's more stunning than the growth of my kids. I mean, it is a fundamentally different place. I don't know, maybe you know, sometimes when you see your kids grow and it doesn't shock you, then you look at the picture, it was like, holy, I cannot believe what has happened here. And we went for a little tour downtown Bentonville last night, looked all over the region. It's incredible what you accomplished, but with that comes challenges. So we titled this report that you're on an inflection point. I get to that in a minute. It's really important that you think about this inflection point and that you need to double down, not on all the things you've done well, like Nelson just told you, but on doing a few new things that are going to keep this place the kind of place you love. And look, Nelson knows I do not, this stays in this room, what I'm going to say now, please. I don't like to criticize other regions, but you go to some of the places that are so-called the rise of the rest. Some of these places that have boomed recently. And you know, I was just in Greenville, South Carolina, a woman there who's a local leader said, we just don't want to be like that. That's not what we want to be. And you look at what's happened and they're forgetting their history. They're wiping out their historic buildings. It doesn't feel the same. I don't know, you know it when you go there, and I don't want to pick on any place. You don't want that to happen here. Look, I'm not talking about not growing. And Nelson and I and Mike and the team have agonized. We talked a lot about this. This is not a stop growing. This is how to grow smarter, better, more inclusively, and to bring more boats up as you attract more people and do all the things you want to do. Look, you've done incredible stuff here. I can't, it's hard to believe. And you have a growth, let me tell you what I think this growth model is that you've created. You offer people incredible high quality of life at an affordable cost of living. Make sense? High quality of life usually costs a lot. Look what's happened in San Francisco, out in Denver, Boulder, Aspen, never mind. Look what's happened, you know, Nashville, Austin. We spend the winter, because you mentioned I'm a professor at the University of Toronto, I don't like the cold. My name's Florida anyway. We spend the winter in Miami Beach. It was just named the single most unaffordable housing market in America, ahead of New York and Los Angeles. You offer quality of place for young people, for professional people, especially for families with kids, at an affordable cost. You've become a magnet for talent, attracting that talent. You've made incredible investments. Think about the investments you've made. I mean, this is just amazing for a region of this size. The investments you've made in arts and culture, the spectacular Crystal Bridges Museum, the Monterey, I could go on. I mean, look at the trails. I'm a cyclist. Look at the investment you've made in cycling and building the outdoor economy. Look at all the incredible Incredible quality of spaces and places you have. And as Nelson said, and with Ross's help and others at the Heartland Forward, now Mike Malone, it's incredible, Mike, that you went over there, the Chancellor of Economic Development. I taught in Pittsburgh. I taught at Carnegie Mellon for nearly 20 years. And I'll tell you, when we created a position like that, and Ross, the Heartland Forward, just named, I think Carnegie Mellon is the #1 technology transfer university in the country. We created a position like that, and it had enormous effect. The funny story is, when we tried to create that position, we were even behind where you are now. The mayor would always say, when Richard came into my office and said we should do something like that, we thought he was from the moon. We thought he was an insane person. But of course, that university technology transfer commercialization ecosystem is what, in a post-industrial economy, what drives growth. So you've done that, and you've built the rudiments of this innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem. And your successes be overwhelming. You open the page of that annual report. I mean, look, we have some of the statistics. Population growth, 4th in the nation. Job growth, 3rd in the nation. Wage growth, non-trivial, most important one here, 2nd in the nation. Named again and again in the top 5, now in the top 4 best places to live in America, surpassing Austin, and that's the truth. But, and here's the but, with success comes real challenges, folks. And I can't underestimate this. Now, some of you will know, in an airport hangar out in an airport, 5 years ago, I gave my first address here. I had just written a book called The New Urban Crisis. That book was a reassessment of my own theories of urban growth and development, where I'd argued that innovation and creativity and knowledge and talent attraction, I was the first crazy person on earth to say that it wasn't important anymore to attract companies, it was important to attract the talent. If you get the talent, you win. We all know that now. But I did a reassessment 15 years on, and I said, with that new model had come new challenges. I called it a new urban crisis. I'm a kid from Newark. So I saw the old urban crisis in the 60s and 70s when my city lost people, people moved to the suburbs, the factory my dad worked in closed, shuttered its doors, and that city collapsed. That's not what the new urban crisis is. The new urban crisis at that moment, 5 years ago, which was challenging San Francisco and New York and Boston and LA, was a crisis of success. That as those communities grew and created innovative companies and created these innovative ecosystems and built these university industry partnerships and did everything right, attracted talent from all over the country and the world, these dynamic young people, what was happening is the housing was becoming unaffordable. And that the people they needed to be school teachers and EMTs and police and all of that support structure were being driven out. And I said this new urban crisis was increasingly going to be the crisis that threatened, well, of course, you saw what happened in San Francisco. You see what's happening in some of these cities. But I said, and this provoked some giggling in the room at the time, be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for. And you know, I said this in Nashville, I said this in Austin, I said it here. People thought this could never happen in Northwest Arkansas. This is an affordable place. We have plenty of housing. We'll never get it. Well, you wake up after the COVID pandemic in the year 2022 and you look at the statistics. I mean, even with me, when I looked at the slide, you have witnessed the second largest increase in median housing prices of every single 350 metro area in the United States. Now, you don't have the housing prices of San Francisco or Austin or Nashville or Miami yet, but you started at a lower base. Your percent increase was bigger than all of those. Your housing prices are up nearly 30% just in the past year. It's an absolute increase of 75K. Look, I talk to people. I'm a working class Italian-American kid from New Jersey. My wife says I drive her crazy. I talk to everybody. I talk to drivers, I talk to wait staff, I talk to young people. We can't afford to buy a house. How do we buy a house? We go to buy a house and there's people coming here from San Francisco, New York, LA, and they have cash because they sold their house and they made, it was worth more money. And there's an investment group bought the house and I can't get a house. This is threatening, and I don't want, look, you still have time, but it's threatening. It's not only an affordability problem, it's threatening a core pillar of this affordable quality of life that has underpinned your successful economic growth. So I think I think Nelson said it, Now's the time to reassess, right? Recalibrate, realign. You've hit on all cylinders on your economic development plan. You've got the university ecosystem beginning to mesh and meld. You've been a talent actor. You are. You know, I think you know this. Any place you go in the country, you now mention Northwest Arkansas, you say Fayetteville or Bentonville or whatever you say. People go, oh, that's interesting. I was there and it was great. I should go visit. That's what you hear all over. You're on the map. So we tried with my team, with the council team, to distill this into some strategic priorities. We don't want to make this too wordy. You can read the report. There's a lot of specifics because there's a lot of wheels and boxes to tick. But I just want to tell you a little bit about the five things we kind of concluded are important for you to think about. Look, this strategic plan is not a to-do. That's not how we work. We're trying to give you what we can with working as a team with the council, some things to think about and to align your own work, to figure out ways that through your own work, your group effort, your community spirit, your colleagueship, that you can move down these five pathways. Well, what did we do? We talked a lot with the council leadership and staff. We did focus groups with lots of folks in leadership positions and stakeholders throughout the region. We partnered on the survey of all the members of the council, not only for this project, but for the two I mentioned done with Heartland Forward. We looked at a ton of data on the region's talent base, economic structure, innovation ecosystem, housing prices, diversity and inclusion. And we put all that together and to identify these five key priorities. So, number one, talent is the core driver of economic development. It is central to your mission. It remains the number one thing to focus on. You are a place that's attracting talent, but you have to double down that effort because other places are competing with you. Both places that are more established and places that are newcomers that want to emulate you. Talent is more footloose than ever before. Like, I spent a lot of time over the past 2 years trying to figure out what remote work means. I've done a lot of research on that myself. Doesn't mean everybody's going to work remotely, but they're saying 20% of work days will be performed remotely. Now, that's for everybody. But if you take the professional knowledge and creative workforce, not the people who can't work remotely, people who work in factories, who deliver stuff to our house, work in logistics and distribution, provide personal services, work in hotels. You take that group, now you're talking 40% of work days remote. Not 20, 40% of work days remote. People have a lot more flexibility, you know? We've seen this kind of, if you see it, this arrow. It used to be companies had the power, corporations, but now over time that arrow's been tilting towards the talent. No, the talent has all the power, but it has more flexibility. People have more flexibility to live where they want. And one of the things that people want is they don't want this split life. They want to what the Industrial Revolution did was split up where we work and where we live. And we had longer and longer commutes, whether it's to a factory like my daddy worked in or to an office. What we're finding is people don't want that anymore. What we've been seeing over the past 20 years, accelerated with the pandemic, is that people want to reintegrate that. They want a fuller life. They want to spend, people aren't dumb. They want to spend time with their kids, with their family. They want to do things they love. And this one, I just want to emphasize, it doesn't mean people are either going to work from their bedroom or work in an office. That's old school. What we hear time and time again, and what speaks to your strength, is people want to work on great projects, with great colleagues, on great challenges, in great spaces and great places. You are offering all of that, the whole bundle. But you have to continue to do it. You can't let your foot off the gas pedal. And it's your issue, I don't think, is attracting talent. Nelson will correct me too if I'm wrong on this, but I think it's retention. I think it's retention is your big to-do. To really think about what you need to do to glue the people who come here to the region. Especially, we heard this in our focus groups with young women, well, with young people in general. You compete better for families, that's for sure. more family friendly. And sometimes young people do want to go to the big city and start their career. Nothing you can do, but you can say, especially to those U of A grads, who've come here, selected to come here from Texas or wherever, Arkansas, all over the country, and when you want to come back and have a family, this is a great place to do it. You don't have to go to the suburb of New York or the suburb of Dallas or the suburb of Austin. You can come back here. But with regard to women and minorities, we heard it a lot, that you have to do more. Now, I don't want to be specific. The report goes into that. We talked a little bit about making this a regional effort. We're in Tulsa yesterday, and we learned that we talked to a group called In Tulsa. They had created a pooling, and we talked a little bit about this. I think we mentioned it in the report. What they do is create a pooling effort to help not only get talent hooked up with the big companies or the small companies, but they create a kind of social life. And I can tell you my own personal story. I taught at Carnegie Mellon. I lived in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh had seen an emptying of the young population, and it was hard. I was single. And, I'm a professor at Carnegie Mellon. I couldn't date. I mean, there are great people at Carnegie Mellon, but they couldn't date them, right? Regardless, they were either a professor or a student. But I was lonely, being honest. Luckily, met my wife giving a speech in Michigan, but that's not here. The thing is, people not only want a job, they want a social life. And with the three big employers and the small employers you have, maybe like a concierge service or some way to pool that, not just with regard to getting the talent to the region and being happy in their careers, but making sure there's a great social life. And of course in this, and I can't emphasize this enough, inclusivity has to be at the center of it, at the very center. It has to be in this day and age something where we're talking, in my book, Rise of the Creative Class, that's what my dad told me. Working class guy, 7th grade education. We'd go visit his factory, and my dad said, every time he said, every single one of these African-American, Puerto Rican, Italian-American, German-American, every single one of these men and women here are creative. They all contribute their creativity. And if you think about this great region, it's come up on the creativity, not of the world's best MIT geniuses, of kind of simple but smart people. That's the beauty of America, isn't it? That so much of our creativity, whether it's an Italian immigrant like my daddy or somebody who was born here, or wonderful African-American musician or whatever it is, a college dropout, there's something in our way that we can do this. So really understanding that every one of us is creative, has potential, tapping that potential, and you can't do that if you're not inclusive, because the people who don't feel they're a part will go elsewhere. They're going to go where they're valued. So put inclusivity front and center. This isn't about sensitivity. This is about sensitivity training. This is about economic development. It's using the full potential of every single human being. Second priority. Continue to do what you've done on bolstering and building this region's innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem. Continue the work. Look, I am a professor. I work in a university. I know how hard it is to change a university culture. It is. Henry Kissinger once said, when asked to contrast the US Senate and national politics to Harvard University, said, of course, the politics were much more ferocious at Harvard because the stakes are much smaller. Universities are some of the hardest institutions in the world to change. They're old. They go back to the feudal era. They're ensconced. We have tenure, but it can be done. It is being done. It's happening at the U of A. It happened at my Carnegie Mellon, #1. Ross can tell you chapter and verse, but it was tough to get there. This isn't easy stuff. Continue it, focus on it, work hard on it, continue to partner with the university as you've done. Make sure we've done a pretty good job at the Heartland Forward and elsewhere at the council identifying your competitive clusters in logistics, distribution. You have others. Continue to focus on what you do well. Expand your startup support. It's funny, I have this big project now on the so-called creator economy. These youngsters that want to be creative or influencers with big technology companies. We're doing this project. Like 2/3 of young people today want to be creators and innovators. They see themselves as their own business. So making sure everyone, regardless, it doesn't have to be a high-tech startup. It can be in fashion, it can be in beauty, it can be anything, any kind of startup that these youngsters want, making sure that they have the opportunity to achieve it. And maybe they don't succeed, there's a pathway to turn them to success in another field. And again, put inclusion at the center of that. Make sure, we did a big project in my hometown of Newark, New Jersey. They do this fantastically. Well, maybe it's because they're such a poor city and a majority city, but they've really put women's entrepreneurship and Latin entrepreneurship and African American, you can do that too. That can be part of your effort. I think you need to increase the scale of your efforts. You're not a big metropolitan area. People talk about Austin, isn't that the new high-tech hub? Miami, isn't that the new high-tech hub? Well, back up a second. Austin and Miami are not isolated islands. Austin is part of the Texas Triangle. What is it, 20, 30 million people? Probably one of the 10 largest economies in the world by economic output. Miami is part of South Florida with Tampa and Orlando, equal in size, if not bigger. You've begun to build this great corridor. Sometimes it's called the 412. Call it whatever you want with Tulsa. And you have an angel network, which is hitting. You have Endeavor, which is this startup sort organization. You have arts and cultural initiatives that are beginning. I hear, and I don't know if this is true, but I got an email today that you've been invited, is this true, to the second round? Nelson's saying it is true. There's a National Science Foundation program. This is the big thing in Washington. National Science Foundation is the place that funds all the high-end research. That you have been invited in collaboration with Tulsa to go on to the second round. This could be game-changing. But it's all because you're starting to work together. And I don't, and Tulsa's one, there's others close by. But thinking downstream about how you're going to grow, and you're not going to grow just by expanding Northwest Arkansas, you're going to grow the way the New York, Boston, Washington corridor, the way the Texas Triangle grow, as other metropolitan areas become close and you partner with them. The third one I think is the most important one, but they're all important, is you gotta address the challenges of growth. It's so important. And you have to do that in a way that doesn't really stymie your economic growth, that's in sync with your economic growth, but it preserves an affordable quality of life. You mentioned the workforce housing. Incredible. Affordable housing, attainable housing. When we had an apartment in New York City, which we gave up during the pandemic because it was just too hard with 2 little kids, in our building, it was 80% market rate, 20% affordable. And there were people in that condominium, I'm sure the penthouse went for $20 million. There are people probably paying $30,000 a month rent, and the affordable rent was probably in the $400, $500, $600, $700, depending on what you can pay, all sharing the same building, all sharing the same amenities. I was just talking to a fellow from New York, and by the way, he said he likes this model the best, even better than putting money in a fund. He likes the idea of because it gets built. He was just saying, it's all hard, but the idea behind this 80-20, or whatever you want, 90-10, 70-30, is that if you do that as a prerequisite, the stuff gets built. But whatever way you want to do it, I don't want to dictate, it's your region. Housing affordability now is important, and look, I work with a lot of real estate firms. This is becoming more important to the real estate development community as well. The real estate development community knows it has to put inclusivity, affordability, net zero, carbon neutrality, social impact. This is becoming more and more important to people who invest, becoming more and more important to the big investment vehicles. So there's some alignment there. There's some alignment there, and you should be talking to developers and the development community that really want to do this with you, and you have a lot to offer, right? You have a lot to offer to people who want to come here and develop. Think about your transit and mobility options. I was a little late here because we caught a pretty big traffic jam. You know this, but maybe I'm an idiot. I didn't expect to catch a traffic jam in Northwest Arkansas. We caught a pretty big traffic jam coming over here. So look, you're investing in EVs. This whole area of the country, is kind of a center for EV, the next generation. As the heartland or the Rust Belt has moved south with the auto manufacturers, you're doing that. You're doing a great job in that with trucks and vans and all of that. Also the bicycling. I think the bicycling is critical, by the way, and not just as a recreational sport, as a mobility strategy. You have a nice climate here, you have a lot of sun. Look, people say it's hot. One thing you know as a cyclist, you don't mind riding. A lot of things are hard when it's hot. Riding a bike's fine when it's hot. You get a breeze. And these e-bikes, which I'm seeing around, and I saw them last night, these e-bikes are a wonderful mobility strategy. That's not the whole thing, but to think a lot about the various modes that you would think about beyond the car. And of course, and I can go on and on chapter and verse about this, one of the limiting factors in this region has been airport connectivity. I didn't believe airport connectivity was an important thing. As an economic developer, I thought it was about innovation and investment in talent until I did a massive empirical study with people who know how to do econometrics, and we found clearly that airport connectivity was one of the top 2 or 3 drivers of regional growth, along with the other ones I mentioned, talent attraction and high-tech clustering. You've done a great job. Oh my God, you've done a great job at the airport. You've done a fantastic job at expanding service. But one thing you might think about is kind of another way of interregional pooling. You know, thinking about what is offered in Tulsa and other places that were in more of a 2-3 hour drive, and thinking about that as well as expanding your own airport. But this direct airport, and very strategically, which you do this better than most any other region of your size in the country, very strategically knowing what kinds of places you need to be connected to for the kind of industry economy and talent economy you want to build. Of course, continue to maintain the character of the region. That's our 4th one, and continue enhancing the quality of life. I say continue. I wrote here continue. I would rephrase that. Continue to expand investments in arts, music, and culture. And look, this creator economy study that I'm doing has convinced me of this. These are not add-ons. These are not fun and games. This is not leisure. Training young people at the cutting edge of arts, music, and culture is going to be a prerequisite for success. When we talk to people who really understand the creator economy, they say, yeah, you need business savvy. Yeah, you need a startup. And you know what they say you need first? A look and a visual identity. Who's training? I teach in an MBA program. Who the hell is training our students in how to create a look? My wife helps me with this because she's good with a camera. If you're making these investments in arts, culture, music, design, those aren't afterthoughts or just good to have. Those increasingly are going to be part of the curriculum and of the ecosystem of innovative success. So continue to do it and expand it and bleed it into everything. Of course, continue to aggressively promote the region nationally and globally as a great affordable place to live. I don't want to get into politics. Sorry. I don't like politics very much. I could spend my time in Washington banging my head against the wall, but instead I travel to Bentonville and Nashville and Tulsa and Indianapolis and Milwaukee and Cleveland and Cincinnati to work with people like you who make the difference. But as states, and I live in Florida, become more aggressive in their policy partners on both sides of the aisle. Continue to differentiate Northwest Arkansas as a fair, as a decent and open-minded place to live, regardless of your political attitude. And you just have to keep on doing that. You got to keep on saying that we're a fair and open-minded place for everybody. That's what I've seen when I've come here, when I talk to people. I feel people who are politically different than me, I engage them. That's what people want. I don't think you should go crazy with this, but when you feel that a policy posture is out of sync with what you believe, quietly and diplomatically engage to minimize any negative fallout from that policy posture that may affect this region. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to make a political fight, but focus and quietly advance the issues the way you want to advance them. But most importantly, differentiate why people of all ages, stripes like to be here. Now, the last one is an interesting one. As you've grown, and I hear this from every single person I talk to here, not just Nelson and the council. People are doing work on a shoestring. You're going to have to expand your civic capacity. I don't know how else to say it. I can't say that diplomatically. You need more civic capacity in this region. And as you grow, now I know there's an ethos here of being effective, cost effective, don't spend a lot. That's great. Nobody wants flashy I have enough of that in Miami with pink Lamborghinis, sorry. But you have to expand out of a very cost-effective way your civic capacity and spin off organizations, thinking very strategically within the council what it does well, what fits, and the council's going to let you know what spins off, what becomes its own organization. And you watch this in other regions, like Pittsburgh have such a long history, or in New York, but you can see how that civic structure, when it's robust, can be really super helpful, especially as political winds change. They become a ballast. And do this on a data-driven way, not on political whim. Focus on the key facts that policymakers need, and this convening function. Make sure that as you do this, the council stays focused on the convening. The council's been incredible. Look at this at convening, but as you grow, you need to add civic capacity. Anyway, I'm a professor, which means I come from the Fidel Castro School of Public Speaking. Give me a microphone and a stage, and I can keep you here for a month. But I think I hit all the high points. And the point I want to make is the time to act is now. You can't hesitate. There's no room for another, maybe, it might be, well, we're not that unaffordable. You are. You're now a hard place for a young person to make a go of it. Get with this thing now. The time to act on this inflection point is now. Make sure that you're maintaining an affordable, high quality of life and protecting the things people love. Some of that, I've been thinking of that. Some of that might even be some more aggressive land banking to make sure that you're banking the things that you love and they don't get torn up. But whatever you do, think about it, act on it now. You need to maintain the things people love, because when it's gone, it's gone. You don't even know it. In a blink of an eye, you come back and it's gone, and people go, it doesn't feel the same. It's not the place I love. It's changed. Anyway, I really love being here. You guys give me energy. The council gives me energy. All of you give me energy. It's tough. You turn on your damn cable news network. You listen to what's happening in Washington, D.C. or Ottawa, where I spend Canada, where I spend half the year, and you get, it's not the most uplifting news. That's all I'll say. You watch the political commercials now in election season, but when you get on the ground in a place like this, and you see what people are doing, putting aside their differences, whatever those differences, cultural, political, social are, it's invigorating. And you have become a model. You have become a model. Look, people look to New York, they look to Los Angeles. There aren't a lot of Northwest Arkansas. Truth. There aren't a lot of Northwest Arkansas for people to look at in smaller, medium size, that are putting this, and you have special circumstances that are allowing you to do it. But you're not just building something for you, you're building something that others, the other places I get to go, I can talk about, and they can try to emulate. Look, I told you what I saw in, 4 or 5 years since I've last, I can only imagine, just think about it, over the life of this, what I'm gonna see in the next 4 or 5 years. And let's make sure as we do this, as you do this, what's happening over the next 4 or 5 years is gonna make this the kind of place where all different kinds of people, in a very inclusive way, can grow and develop, use their talents, create a meaningful life for them and their families, and continue to build a really, really special place that all of you clearly love. Thanks so much for having me back. It's an honor to be with you.